Bloodborne's almost 10 years old, and it will be in a few months. I decided, is this game as great as I remember? Because I remember when Elden Ring came out, I was there like, no, this is still my favourite Souls game, by far the better game. So I decided, let's replay it and see how I truly feel. And this is a game I've platinumed and have hundreds of hours in, so I decided I'll enjoy it. So like every time we start this game, we get fiddled by our uncle, Fist the family dog, and are welcome to one of the most beautiful views in gaming. It really does upset me this is at 30 FPS, and then we just go straight to the dream. We pick up the trusty saw cleaver and hunter's pistol, because what else was I really going to end up picking? Come back, talk to big old Gilbert. I love this man. I hope nothing bad happens to him. Fighting this big guy really showed me how rusty I was for this game. I really was struggling for visceral attacks to start, which that's unsurprisingly does change by into this game. And of course, what else is there to do except unlock the most pointless shortcut in this entire game? I generally don't actually know why they've even added this gate. Absolutely sprint down to the swamps and realise how weak I am, but Fashion Souls comes first, and there's nothing more important than looking cool in this game. Followed on by the fact that this big wolfman and rats look pretty chill. Then I decide, yeah, let me just stand under them as they dolphin dive onto my skull. I hurry through the rest of this area and unlock the shortcut to Father Gascoigne so I can use that later. Because if I was going to do this right, I was going to do it the first boss most people find, which is the Cleric Beast. The first thing I was going to do was absolutely scum these werewolves, because there was just no way I was going to fight these legitimately at level 10. They would have eaten me. I mean, Cleric Beast just has such a cool entrance with that dive over the wall. Even though we know it's not a wall and that's just a platform, so I don't really know how we wouldn't see him to begin with. And I won't lie, I went to this fully expecting me just to maybe struggle a little bit, but stomp this guy. I mean, in hindsight, I am glad I died to this boss, because I want this game to be as hard as I remember. But for a man who's played Elden Ring and Bloodborne multiple times, I really should be beating this guy without any issues. I mean, I was always going to come back second time around and absolutely stomp this guy, but it was just nice to die at least once. At least to make me feel like this game was really as hard and great as I remember. With the Cleric Beast down, I knew the next thing I was going to do was go to Bloodborne's first true test, which is Father Gascoigne. Pretty much this man made half the people quit this game, because it really was just so aggressive. And like I said, as much as I want to go in and beat him first time, my dream was he absolutely dominates me for a good few goes, and we just move on from there. To prep for Father Gascoigne, I did go into the cage dog area, kill all the dogs before they become the biggest problem in this game, go level up, and realise that Gehrman has a thing for inanimate objects, such as the dog. For the first time, this guy did not trigger the fireball to kill these dudes, so I actually had to squirm around for a little bit before getting to Father Gascoigne. Now when it comes to Father Gascoigne, might I introduce you all to the tombstone method. It's a very simple method. You stand behind these tombstones, and you hit him through them. He can't hit you, you can hit him. And this tombstone method continued with me running around the tombstones and him struggling to get around them, with me visceralling him every now and then, but from the rates my bullets are going down, you can tell I really am out of touch when it comes to this game. I mean, if you look through this entire fight, I started with 13 blood vials and 13 bullets, and my bullets ran out a lot quicker than my blood vials did. But I've had that beat him first time, without a music box, and without really being leveled up, really did upset me. Like this, I remember when I started, this man made me hate this game so much 10 years ago. And now that I'm older and a lot more depressed, well, it's a bit sad that I just stomped him. But I collect a dead woman's brooch, because I'm sure I'm not going to ruin a young girl's life with this. We do collect the Blood Gem Workshop tool, essential if we're actually going to do any amount of damage, and we get a cutscene to the best guy in Bloodborne, the Church Dweller. I love this man. I love him as much as my favourite crow that I'll be sure to introduce you all to later. It's also Church Dweller, and he seems extremely suspicious. But because I've played this before, I know in my heart he is the most pure man in this game. I will never hurt him. However, I also can't be bothered to save most people, so he is going to get his heart broken.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
I sprint for the next area, go straight to Alfred for the fire paper. We all know what this is for. And then I'm introduced to my second death because I decided, let me really fuck around with this wolf and find out. And I find out I did. I won't lie, this death really upset me because it was pure stupidity and I should know better. But we do make our way all the way to Old Yharnam, and Jorah gives us the aura level of aura level threats. And my plan here is to not attack anything, sprint over, and have a lovely conversation. As you can see, I do kill this little terror. Apparently that was enough to really piss him off, because he was not in a talking mood. And my third death is just as stupid as my second, because I did just fall off trying to get down the ladder to get away from him. Apparently Jorah's lifelong partner is also Michael Jackson. After the Jorah and his partner shenanigans, I decided to try and parkour down this entire building with no blood vials. And I do play the game of can I get down, because I forgot how to lower the chalice to kill the beasts. And I could not. And as my 4th death, 3 of them have been just pure stupidity, and 1 of them has been me just getting stuck. So I am quite annoyed at that fact. To show my displeasure at Jorah and all the shenanigans that happened, I decided to kill his friend. For one thing the AI has is terrible area association. So if you don't know, people in Bloodborne are fixed into a certain area, and if they do travel out of it, they will slowly try and travel back into it, which is why you can trap people on your body, so just make a life later in the game. And this guy will not come down the stairs. At least he won't stay there. And this is how we exploit him, to kill him just to piss off an NPC that has no feelings, because he really fucks me off. Then after all these shenanigans with my no blood vials and no bullets, I decide it's time for running simulator through Old Yarnum. Normally you would kill these werewolves or kill the werewolf that comes out of the building, but after running to this dead end, I knew it was just time to sprint, because there was no way on earth I was ever going to survive. After that 5th death, I knew what time it was. It's everyone's favourite time when they play this game, blood vial farming.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
And early on, there really is just no areas. But before we do that, we just speak to Gilbert and get the flame sprayer, which I can't use, so it was a completely pointless conversation. But I'm glad Gilbert's okay. But yes, I now spend the next about 20 to 30 minutes simply killing the same 4 enemies and then running back. It is the biggest downside of Bloodborne is the blood vials. Like, yes, having 20 ways to heal yourself is fantastic, but the fact I have to continuously farm them is god tier awful. But I get to the Bloodstaff Beast, and like everyone that ever plays this game, fire paper equipped, cocktails equipped, Molotov cocktails equipped, and blood beast pellets equipped. And we know exactly what method as I sprint to this corner and just absolutely launch it. Yeah, I died to Bloodstaff Beast. I'm not afraid to admit that, because I won't lie, I for some reason have always struggled against this man. I know many people think he is quite easy, especially with the cocktail method, but I just can't do it. I can't get the viscerals, and I can't get him to stay in that corner. So, like a true terrorist from software games, I summoned Alfred. Yep, I use summons. My logic being, if you're new to the game, you'll use summons. I don't use summons for 90% of the fights, but Bloodstaff Beast is not the most important fight. Or if there's a fight I know I'm going to get stuck on, we might as well use this summon. And, well, me and Alfred slap. And then Bloodstaff Beast is dead. A lot easier. But to put my own 2 pence in for this boss, I do love how aggressive it is. But my god, the poison is far too aggressive. The fact that I have to stockpile antidotes before even doing this fight is really annoying. And if you're new to this game, and maybe you don't know where to buy them, or you don't know where to find them, it is an absolute pain. Especially since all this does is unlock a little shortcut, and unlocks another area to the game, which isn't that essential. But the entire point of doing that fight was purely to unlock this door, to unlock this elevator, to go to this crazy cripple. And also because we are about to do everyone's favourite part, the falling simulator. Also, for some reason, this beast down here has a weird amount of lore, if I remember correctly. But of course, I want his rune, so we just beat him to death, and simply progress. But run on through, drop on down, and I've now saved 20k of runes. Runes, echoes. I'm going to hope I've not called them runes this entire way through this video, because that is going to be mildly upsetting. But from this, we can now go straight to Vikramelia when we're ready. We grab some essential knowing mist, which we are definitely going to need for later. We try very carefully to die to the Sackman, which, spoiler alert, unfortunately I don't actually do anything in this area. I never get the tonightness. We're going to ignore the fact that I had a stroke saying tonightness. We also didn't get them the girl. Yep, I'm going to completely gloss over that entire situation. We sprint all the way over to a crying woman, who then proceeds to instantly explode like most women in my life. I do not blame her at all. And Vikramelia gave me my biggest nightmare, a blowjob with teeth, and it puts me out of my misery. Following on my awful first attempt, I see my blood vial count is on 0, so as normal proceed to go back to blood vial farming. Like I said, it's the worst part of the game, you have to do it a lot. But this time I'm more prepared. I quit my knowing mist after remembering she can heal. I forgot about that before I went to the fight originally. Not that I ever got to a healing stage, and sprint right back to her. And this run went a lot better. I remember again, when I played this originally, she gave me a lot of issues, especially the healing, so I don't think I actually knew about the numbing mist, which, that's on me. But I, again, wish she was a bit harder. I just seem to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I almost threw the fight, but in my head it's so much harder than it used to be, and it really does upset me how easy this game feels to me. It also feels a lot slower than it used to, which again really is heartbreaking. But like any rational person, we simply walk over to this skull, have a complete psychiatric break, unsurprisingly, since we've just killed a bunch of monsters and watched a woman turn into a giant sheep. And we hear Lawrence saying he'll never forget our adage, and then he proceeds to then pump the entire city filled with old blood and destroys the entire city. So maybe he did forget the old adage. Naturally, after the shenanigans I just went through, we decide to go to the hardest boss in the entire game. The Witches of Hemwick in Hemwick Lane. I won't lie, getting to the witches is the hardest part of this, because there are dogs with horns, guys with guns, and the shadow people. The shadow people are terrifying when you first see them, so naturally I sprinted through the entire area. And I won't lie, when I was opening this gate, my god, I was praying that I got through in one piece, because I knew if I got grabbed by anything, I was dead no matter what. And those 1,500 echoes meant a lot at the time. Now we're at the most important part, the entire Bloodborne game. As you can see, I am slowly baiting out these crows one at a time, for I am protecting one crow known as Pebbles. Now you may be thinking, who's Pebbles? Why is he important? Well, lore-wise, he's absolutely, completely pointless. He's just a crow that can't see, so he doesn't attack us. Who is nicknamed Pebbles. I would die for Pebbles. If you wouldn't die for Pebbles, you should probably kill yourself. So naturally, when running to the witches, I went to the bridge to go get that rune. I did not realise how many dogs are in this area of the game. I mean, look behind me right now. I'm counting at least 10 dogs. When I was on this bit of bridge, I really thought I was dead. I didn't even realise till editing this that I actually didn't even grab the rune. I gave up because I was simply going to die if I did so. That being said, I decided an entire boss is easier than dealing with dogs, and I walked in with 3 blood vials and 4 bullets. And you might be thinking, I am absolutely insane. And for some reason I forgot the Shadow Man spawned at the very start, so start hitting him. Honestly, the worst part about this game is actually remembering what that witch is, because I could not remember for ages. But once you find them, it really is just a beat slash. I won't lie, the fact that I almost died to them really was concerning. Like, that little area there where the shadows are hitting me after getting pinned, I was scared. I completely forgot the witches had that stunning ability. And I won't lie, I was once again lucky not to die here. I mean, look at my health. The fact that I've only done that, honestly, I'd say it's about 1 health. I should have really checked, because that was really low. But I did also go in with 4 bullets and 3 blood vials, and I've come out with 4 bullets and no blood vials. So you know what, that's something we can live with. Sprint over to the only room that's even important to get the rune workshop tool, so we can actually use runes. Literally the only point anyone ever comes here, otherwise no one would come here, because it's not an enjoyable boss, it's just a chore. It's back to Central Yarnum, and now it's time for the even more fun part of Falling Simulator, because before it's quite an easy route. Now we're playing Jump for the Door. But like any rational man that sees a place, I steal some doll's clothes, steal a bone, and steal a child's umbilical cord. I also find this hair element, so naturally I steal it. Next we decide to re-talk to Alfred's, and speak to this store which is guarded by a dead man. But before I leave I decide I want the church dweller to be happy. Also the fact that I want to go get to the hall.
Who's there?
Hello, whore.
Sadly for me, I don't actually know about the clinic in this part of the game. Although I know about it, my character doesn't, so I accidentally send the man to his death. And I actually really like this dude, he's actually quite a good bit of comic relief. But I decide to progress, pick up some church clothes, and slowly squirm. And the Forbidden Woods. I can't remember too much about this area when I went into it originally. Like, it really means nothing to me for the most part. Like, if you tell me what's the most forgettable part of the woods, or the game, it is the woods. And I don't really include Bergenworth in the woods, it is its own separate area, because Bergenworth is obviously so big lore-wise. Also in these woods, I realise I'm very weak. Because I regain the knowledge of a wet spoon, I fall in this pit full of crows. And we slowly sprint over to when people decide to spontaneously turn to snakes, which I don't even remember why they do that, but there's some subtle foreshadowing for the next boss. But I get the cannon, because the cannon does go big boom, even though it takes about 12 bullets a shot, but I decided it's better to have it and not need it, than need it and not have it. Whilst unlocking a shortcut, I discover Vlad. Vlad is the Master of the League, and is the first blue rune I get in the entire game. And you can have his rune equipped to drop vermin, and you can also have him in certain summons if you have it equipped in certain boss fights, which is very useful later on in the game. I then decide fighting every snake in this area will be a simple death trap for me and a waste of runes. Why do I keep calling them runes? I mean blood vials. Also, it would probably drain my echoes and I would die. But I decide to just run through as quickly as possible to get to the next boss fight. I absolutely do love the Shadows of Yarman fight originally because, well, it's the first, at least multiple fight that actually means something, because the Witches of Hemwick, let's just pretend they don't even exist. But I completely forgot the order in which I fight them in, so I did struggle, and I actually had a really abysmal showing because I died way too easy for my first attempt here, especially since they're actually very easy to visceral. While trying to find my way back to the boss, I end up running into the blue people, the emissaries, and somehow I just get one tap by them. Surprisingly, he kills me more than the bosses do later in this game. There's a little spoiler for you. But this time I do find my way back to the shadows, and it goes exactly how you thought it would, with visceral after visceral, because, well, that is how most of this game works. As long as you have a gun to shoot, you'll probably stun an enemy that's at least humanoids, and most of them are humanoids. For some reason when this bug attacks me, he did 0 damage, and it barely built my frenzy, so sometimes you gotta take the little wins where you can. I won't lie, he does still almost completely stomp me into the ground, but it's the little wins in life. I decided not to unlock the shortcuts because I remembered how short Bergenworth was. I saw this bug chase me, saw the true boss of Bergenworth, the church choir man, and decided to just sprint upstairs instead. And this is where I discovered a horrible fact, that this hunter and the bug don't hurt each other. Like, some enemies in this game will hurt each other, such as they trigger a flaming ball, or some enemies straight up can just attack each other. The bug and this man cannot, which makes no sense to me, and completely ruined me, for when I came down the ladder, I was stomped into the ground at an alarming rate. So to avoid this problem, I decide I'm actually going to open the shortcuts so I don't have to deal with this long run around and attract about 20 of enemies while fighting this guy. Because there's a reason he's called the true boss of Bergenworth, because this man is strong. Like any YouTuber, I pick up some students' clothes and die for them because that's just what you do when you start becoming a YouTuber. You like anything related to children. Honestly, this guy killed me so much I decided just to ignore him and sprint straight into the boss room to fight Rom. And I decided to go for the good old technique of try and hit Rom as quick and as hard as possible and ignore the minions and hope you can just deal with Rom before too many of them are spawned in. Naturally, this didn't work and we died. And from the sheer abuse I got from the true boss of Bergenworth before, I decided this was a great time to take a break. So I woke up the next day and decided, because I'm so weak, let's just do the non-story areas and really get leveled up because, well, my god, this was fucking atrocious. And the first thing I decided to do was go talk to Gilbert, and Gilbert, for some reason, is now Patches, who gives me the tonsil stone. So I decide, well, let's just do Patches' quest. Patches decided to become an absolute glazer for the Amygdala, and then we're teleported to school. All we do is open the door and go speak to Patches, and Patches really is an odd guy. I say that he's always an odd guy in every Souls game, so I really should not be surprised, and neither should you. And naturally, since I'm in school, I decide I'm going to go find more kids' clothes because I am a YouTuber, and that's just what we do. Now, like most people, you would probably play this normally, sprint through and unlock shortcuts, get kicked by Patches, and that would be that. But because I've got hundreds of hours in this game and really didn't want to do it, I decided to do the elevator skip. The elevator skip is simple. You sit down, you quit out, and when you load back in, you'll be at the bottom. Take a little bit of damage, and you can send the elevator up, so you can skip the entire area. Now you might be thinking, why would I do that if I'm trying to see how great the game is? Sadly for me, I have this area completely memorized, because this swamp area is full of poison. And this swamp area has completely fucked me. And mentally, I'm not doing that again. So decide, let's just skip this because, well, there's nothing really here except swamp and getting kicked by Patches. So we get to the Amygdala boss fight. And I've realised while I was trying to scum the fight that my weapon is in fact a little short and it doesn't quite work for the method I'm trying to attempt. Which is sit in the balls of the Amygdala and have him jump over you and hit him in the head. Because I just kept missing his head. So I decided it's probably time for me to get a second weapon. And I settle on the Kirkhammer, because for some reason I decided let's do a strength build, probably the most inferior of all builds. But to be fair, that's how most people would probably play this game the first time they play it, so it's probably a fair thing to do. After not being able to scum the fight, I decide, well, let's actually see what it's like. Forget there's these two hunters here and decide to fight them. They eat me. Now would be the great time to show Bloodborne's most unique part compared to all the other Souls games. Chalice dungeons. And you might be thinking, why am I putting a random chalice in? Well, this chalice is known as the Cum Chalice. And the reason it's called the Cum Chalice, one, is it says the word cum. Two, because it is known for farming echoes. Simply, you go into this chalice, and this dude will die and drop about 83,000 echoes. Now you might be thinking, well, this is a bit scummy to do, you should be leveling up the normal way to really experience the game. Well, that's the joys of having played this game before. I can appreciate it whilst not having to do all the slug work that maybe a new person will have to do, so I decided to quickly farm some echoes and level up. But don't worry, for all my scummy tactics, I still died to the Amygdala again. I do not remember the fight being this hard, and he's actually now one of the bosses that's killed me the most. Being twice, I've had a pretty good run so far, and the fact that I've now scummed echoes, it should be a bit easier for the rest of the game. And karma comes full circle. I decided to finally stop trying to scum the fight and fight him normally. And when I fight him normally, I actually kill him, so maybe that's a sign. Maybe don't always choose fights when you know you're fully capable of doing it. But we get another chalice, even though I don't plan on doing chalice dungeons in this review of the game. I know how they are, and I don't need to comment on them. They will never change, and they're mainly used to exploit things, such as echoes. Before I leave this area completely, I decide to get the Great Lake Rune to get all those resistance, and then decide to get sucked off by the Winter Lanterns. Unsurprisingly, it absolutely destroyed me, because Frenzy plus Swamp Water is not a good thing. I returned to Bergwath after all my shenanigans and absolutely stomped that hunter into the ground, because, well, my god, he deserved it. So I can tell that Echo Glitch has definitely worked, mainly because I'm now level 60, opposed to being like level 15, so it makes it a bit easier. And then I decide, well, it's probably time to go kill Rom. So I decide to summon that hunter, because my god, I need this to be a little easier, because I had a long day in this area. Also, whilst trying to kill Master Willem, I learned that he is completely immune to being hit with the big hammer, which is a really weird thing for him not to be able to be hit by. Obviously you can hit him normally, but just not in hammer mode. Very odd. But I wanted that eye rune, so I killed him anyway. This time while fighting Ron, I decided to take a lot more patient approach, opposed to just rushing in. And I won't lie, I was probably in this fight for a good 10 minutes. One, because I absolutely could not be bothered fighting the little minions after the first wave, but also he just kept standing on his hind legs, so I had to keep running in circles, waiting for him to stop doing it. But then, obviously, we beat him, because, well, Rom is once again one of the easier bosses. Which is really sad, because she won't actually hit you until you hit her, so it's quite a sad way to hit her. But my god, this is such a beautiful arena, and it's just a really nice boss. Not a hard boss, but it's very memorable. After killing a spider, we run up to this crying woman, who's clearly had a terrible birth or C-section. So naturally we stare, and the blood moon appears, so we simply progress to the next area of the game. Now that blood moon's appeared, I knew it was time to put Gilbert down. I travelled straight to central Yarnum, shed a tear, and put him out of his misery, quick and painless, like he deserved. I loved him, and I will miss him forever. Plus he drops a claw mark, which is a decent rune, so you know what, it was worth it. Rest in peace, Gilbert. Not quite Pebbles, but you'll be missed. Then we go back to the clinic where we originally started, find Yuseska, and sadly put her down, because she's now been turned into an emissary, and it breaks my heart. We also then find the Skeptical Man, which again breaks my heart, because I actually like him. He's quite a nice bit of comedic relief. We go upstairs to find the imposter, because I forget you can get to her before the blood moon. I went after, so instead of having to fight her, she simply just sat here having a complete orgasm over the fact that she's been picked by gods. So naturally we kill her to collect her child's umbilical cord. Because what else are we to do? Now, I'm glad I did this challenge, because I learned something. Normally, when you give the brooch to a little girl, you will then tell her to go to the clinic or go to church. I did neither, because I was like, I'll just leave her alone, and hopefully she'll just live. I should have known better, because this is a From Software game. But I went to the window, just on the off chance, because even if an option came up, I was going to walk away. Our big sister speaks, saying, "Have you seen my little sister?" And naturally, I feared the worst, so I sprinted straight to the sewers with the big piggy. And I killed the big piggy. Obviously, you stick your fist in the pig for good luck. And as I waited for the pigs to despawn, I picked up the red ribbon, and it broke my heart. But I knew what was going to happen the second I decided to go down this story quest. Like the good Samaritan I am, though, I decided I would give the big sister, who, by the way, somehow wasn't home for 3/4 of the night. Where was she? Because we barely lived. I'm sure she'll take the death of her entire family well. Okay, she didn't take it well, but she did clean the ribbon, so that's always a bonus. They'll want no blood on my ribbons. So I was then conflicted. Do I continue with the story or do I go to my favourite area in the entire game? Which, to no one's surprise, is Canehurst. Everyone loves Canehurst. It's just it's a nice change of pace compared to the rest of the game, especially cosmetically, since it's covered in snow. So naturally, like any normal person, we decide to get in this carriage that just appears out of nowhere and hop right in and teleport to Canehurst. I mean, if you want a nice Christmassy area for Bloodborne, you go to Canehurst since it's all snowy. And I won't lie, Canehurst definitely has some of the best items, with the Evelyn, the Chikage, and I'm pretty sure it's got another weapon that's actually pretty decent. It also has one of my favourite bosses. However, the thing that broke my heart is I got through this entire area within 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I remember when I first played this, it took me hours to get through. Probably maybe not hours, maybe an hour and a bit, but it took me a lot longer than it did. But yeah, I got through in about 10 minutes. I think I timed it was about 10 minutes, which was absolutely heartbreaking. But when people ask me, what's my favourite boss in Bloodborne, if you're going to not say Ludwig, because for most of us it's Ludwig, at least from a cinematic point of view, I absolutely love from the base game, Master Ligarius. I just think it's really cool. He throws into a chair, hidden away boss. Not too aggressive, not too hard, not too easy. In my head, love this fight, one of my favourite. And I won't lie, the favourite thing about this fight for me, he actually killed me. Because if I had just beaten him into the ground, I would have been heartbroken. And a lot of people go, well, you did scum. Echoes. I'm only about level 60 here. I'm not overly powered. I'm still strong, but I'm not OP. I can just take a hit or two. But yes, thank God he killed me once. Because I was going to be absolutely heartbroken if he didn't. I mean, the worst part about this fight is the annoying runbacks. You've got to go through the entirety of Canehurst. As long as you get the shortcut, though, it's a bit easier. But I mean, this entire fight, to me, is beautiful. He's got strong lore. His scythe is cool. All his range attacks are cool. He, if you know how to beat him, is quite trivialized because he's very vulnerable to visceral attacks and he's very vulnerable to parries because he has a lot of charged up attacks. But that doesn't mean I don't really enjoy this fight. He's actually probably at his strongest when he's doing his range attacks in the first phase, because in the second phase, being a lot more aggressive is kind of a downfall because as long as you just shoot, most of the time you'll probably hit the parry and you can visceral him. But second time, I did kill him. Naturally, this is probably one of the most missed things if you just don't know. When you cosplay as the Ice King, as we all naturally do, you then just unlock the entire area where Queen Annalise is abiding. Naturally, my first ever girlfriend was called Annalise, so simply I commit to being a personal simp, her only simp, as it should be. I won't lie, I was thinking, what other option areas can I go to in the game? And well, there's none, especially in the base game. Obviously it's a DLC, but I don't go to that area yet. But I was thinking, where can I go instead of continue the main story? There was actually nowhere I could go. I swore my oath to the Vile Bloods, and it would pretty much was me going, I'm going to have to go back to the main area and the main story. But if I'm going to be a Vile Blood, I was going to commit to it, so I committed to it completely by completely cosplaying as the bloody Crone of Canehurst. But before I could start doing such things, I decided I've just realised I've not done Eileen's quest. So I go where the bloody Crone of Canehurst be and found Eileen, and I've never actually fought Eileen before, at least as far as I remember. So naturally I decide it's time I've got to put her down. And you can probably guess how this fight went. Parry and visceral attacks, because she's a human and she's susceptible to being parried. That is pretty much the pattern for any enemy you'll fight in this game, which really upset me because it really is just hold gun shoot, attack, hold gun shoot, attack. Obviously some enemies you can't do that with, but for the most part that's just how the fights go. But as I put down Eileen, and she probably is probably most relatable to Jorah here, saying all hunters must die, because they are pretty fucked up. Jorah admits so, she admits so, albeit in her madness. But with her dead, no bloody Crane of Canehurst. My god, I think I've just had a stroke. But I decided to go full sip mode and buy all the armor. So in Yahar'gul, I really do just get hurt. Like, I really did forget how much the damage the enemies do here just completely turns up, especially due to the earlier areas. Like, I'm getting 1 or 2 hit. So I definitely don't feel as bad about being a little scummy with my blood echoes earlier, because it feels necessary at this point, because my god, my health got absolutely demolished just there. I'm introduced to the 3 worst enemies in this entire game, the 3 hunters in Yahar'gul, and my god, I get given that prison treatment. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can see here I was squirming for a while, but yeah, I got the fish treatment alright, because my god, they hurt me. And yes, I decide once again to just scum these guys, because they pretty much don't drop anything of value, and they're just a giant pain. But once you've killed them once, you never have to do it again. And in this area, I did come to this realization that the hardest thing to kill in this game aren't bosses, it's just other hunters. Other hunters are by far the hardest things to fight in this game. Not because the bosses aren't hard, but because for some reason, these enemies just feel so scaled up and strong compared to you. They just feel like they have endless resistance and they do endless damage. So it really is just a very sad realization that maybe some of the hardest parts of this game aren't the bosses themselves. Which, don't get me wrong, I enjoy that maybe some of the minor enemies are strong, but they shouldn't be stronger than someone like Ludwig or Lawrence. And I remembered very quickly why I hate this entire area. It is the little chess monsters, because my god, they are quick, they have ranged projectiles. Honestly, they remind me of the giant lobsters, they just shoot and they are fast. But naturally I went to the next boss, which is the One Reborn, which is a really weird enemy. Basically all the Bell people just summon this big meaty mutation that just falls from the sky. And I can't lie, I somehow died to this the first time. I don't really get how, because I don't think I've ever died to it before. It's not a hard boss. Like, yeah, it has some big hidden attacks, but they're very easily telegraphed because he does a giant glowing head hum before he decides to drop on you. But anyway, when I do this fight, I do kill all the people up top because I ain't dealing with fireballs and bell ringing people. Especially when I can just summon that dude who will then just, you know, hit it and distract it, so I only actually have to deal with the bell people before dropping down and killing it pretty goddamn quickly. But after dealing with the One Reborn, I decide to go back to Yarkul and get the Upper Cathedral key so I can do the last optional area in the game. On the run here, I realise how much stronger I am than the enemies that were here earlier. Before it was taking me 2 or 3 hits, and now I'm killing Gatling gun guy in 1 hit, killing the guy with the sword in a hit, so I'm thinking I'm pretty confident, I'm pretty goddamn strong. Well, these 2 witch doctors humble me pretty goddamn quick, because they absolutely beat me into the ground and kill me. So I have to then do the run all over again. And I mean, this area is just creepy. Like, we know that the Healing Church is a terrible place, but looking at all these mutated babies really does just narrow down how absolutely disgusting of people they are. And you can see all these babies are crawling and looking towards the Cathedral Clock Tower, which once again is a little bit of subtle foreshadowing. Really isn't subtle at all. They are flat out staring at where you end up going, and an important area in lore, and well, my god, just a healing church in general. Pretty much just a symbol of it is that clock tower, so really says it all. But like any rational person, mainly since I steal babies' umbilical cords and steal shoes and clothes, I decide to crush them all into mince. I killed this quick so I can get my favourite armour in the game, and that's not even a joke. I actually love the choir armour. It was beautiful to me. I let my muscle memory absolutely kick in when it comes to that werewolf. Like, I didn't know what was there, but I knew there was something, so my hands just did what they do. Now, walking up to Chandelier, I was feeling pretty cocky, thinking, yeah, I know there's a werewolf, and he knocks it down. What made me shit myself was I fucking forgot there was 3 of them. And they absolutely charged me. But they charged me up the wrong flight of stairs, so I simply decided to sprint all the way around. But I run into a thirsty whore who gives me a forbidden blowjob and sucks my insides straight out of me. Luckily for me, I stomp into the ground. And I very quickly get re-humbled and learned if I was ever handed the opportunity to do twins, I absolutely could not handle it, because these 2 absolutely beat me to the ground. And the sad part is, I know I have to kill them to get the key in order to progress. So I was pretty much hands tied, I am going to have to fight these guys instead of trying to run around, which was a pain in the ass. And you can tell from the 0 insight I have that it really did not go well, considering I came to this building with 14. But I did get my key, and I did get my emotes for make contact, which was the important thing. I won't lie, I did absolutely hate this area. I really did just forget how hard some areas are for no reason, and this just feels like a really hard area for no reason. Especially since the boss that's upcoming, which I'm just going to say worst boss in the game. Maybe between that and the Witch's Hemwick, like both of them are just really, really bad. I mean, this one causes a bit more of a problem, so I guess it's a challenge just from sheer numbers, but Celestial Emiracies are not a hard boss. The area, the entire area, and every enemy in the area before, so much harder than these guys. Like, you can see in the gameplay, I'm just being chased by blobs. And all I know is I have to just find the one that doesn't have a health bar, and just hit it. But don't worry, because this boss has a second phase. It goes big. And then after its second phase, it actually has a third one where it grows tentacles in its head. And for some reason, when it grew tentacles in its head, it decided to do absolutely nothing. It just didn't attack me. It just walked off and let me beat it to death. So I don't know if it just broke. I don't know what that was, but yeah, it really does highlight how just goddamn awful this boss is. Especially for the area that's hyped up as much as the Healing Church. The fact that this was the first boss in this area is absolutely diabolical. And honestly, thinking about it now, I really do think it puts a really big negative impact on Bloodborne in general. Like, don't get me wrong, bad bosses I'm expected, and everything can be perfect. But I've had more issues from just these guys in the woods when they killed me. So, they really should have done better. But I break the window and get a little bit more of subtle foreshadowing for who I'm going to have to fight later in this game. He will be fun. Somehow this MRC that was inside was harder than the entire boss I just decided to fight earlier. Then we pretty much enter my bedroom, the Altar of Despair, and we get to see good old Abritus. Now, I mean, in my head, I don't normally find Abritus that hard of a fight, and for the most part she wasn't. Like, my first death was just me being greedy here, and if I just took my time, I'd have killed her first time quite easily. I also managed to fuck up a second time, so we're not really going to talk about that. It took me 3 times to kill this woman, so that actually at this moment makes her the boss that's killed me the most. Which, to be fair, considering she's the daughter of the cosmos, I'd kind of hope she does. She's meant to be a big powerful, and I'm just a dude, so maybe lore-wise, the fact that she's killed me the most out of anyone else is a great sign, but for the most part I didn't actually find this fight as hard as I remember. Like the pattern with every boss I've mentioned. In my head, it took me so many more attempts. Now maybe after Elden Ring, I'm just better. The speed of the game feels different, but really, the game is a lot easier than I remember. And it really is heartbreaking, because I hold this game in such high esteem. Like, yes, I did scum it with echoes, but that's not really an excuse for how easy I'm finding it. I mean, for the Abritus fight alone, I came out with 6 bullets and 16 blood vials left. I used 4 blood vials in an entire fight against a daughter of the cosmos. Like, this should be something that's draining at least to 5. Like, don't get me wrong, I get I'm probably a bit more skilled than I used to be, but it really is just heartbreaking knowing that this game is just nowhere near as hard as I remember it being. But with all the optional areas now dealt with, I decide it's probably time to continue with the main story, so I decide let's go to the Nightmare of Mensis. But before I get to Nightmare, I am back in school, and we decide to go pay Patches a nice little visit. And since I have no plans on doing any of the chalices, I decide, once I get the item from him, I'll just kill him for a bit more insight because, well, 1, I'm not going to go into chalices, and 2, I've never actually seen him in a chalice to actually buy stuff from him, so it really is just no benefit to me for keeping him alive. But in the Nightmare, it is once again Sprinting Simulator because the brain of Mensis is active. Now whilst it's active, you can't stand out in the open, so it's easier to sprint through everything instead of dealing with it. If you want to explore this area once you've dealt with the brain, that's great, but until you've done that, it is a pain in the ass. So get the shortcut and then sprint to the next room. I won't lie, this silver beast catching me really did scare me. I thought he was going to just chase me down and kill me because my health got very low. But apart from that, we enter every girlfriend's favourite room, the spider room. I mean, you know they'd love it if they saw it, because my god I do. But again, kill the one with the bell before we even progress, because I don't want to deal on the off chance of getting invaded, because to your surprise there is actually quite a few people still playing this game, so it is an off chance it may happen and I just can't be bothered with it. As always, we bump into a random hunter, which causes me more problems than anything else in this game has so far, but he isn't actually that bad. He is very susceptible to being parried and visceraled, which makes it a little easier. And we also find From Software's greatest creation, the Crow Dogs, and we shall not confuse the Crow Dogs with the Dog Crows. And if you can't quite tell what they are either dogs with crow heads or crows with dog heads, because he decided let's just mix the 2 most annoying enemies in the game into one super being. Nice work. But we carry on and find Mikolash, and I can't lie, I absolutely love Mikolash. Don't get me wrong, as a fight he is kind of a bit annoying because, oh well, he just runs away a lot. But he is filled with so much lore, he's kind of got a cool design, and I do like, as much as I did say he's a bit annoying running away, he's a bit different to most fights. He's a human. He has cowardly traits, which is nice. Some humans are cowards. And he literally lives in a nightmare to gain information after sacrificing so much. And if you ever want to read more about him, I would highly recommend it because he has a lot of lore, especially the School of Fences and all of that. And I can't lie, whilst chasing him, he decided just not to run to his final boss room for some reason, and decided to take this really weird detoured path up the stairs, and then drop down that way instead of just jumping through the mirror like he normally does, which I've never seen before. So, I mean, this really has been just a full discovery of new things McClash has been doing. But now it is in, I do just drop him, and I just don't let him do Call of Beyond because, well, I don't need him eating me. And I did eat McClash first time, which was upsetting. But I do hit him with the big iron on my hip, and he dies that way, which was a pretty cool way for him to die in my opinion. And he does drop one more bit of lore right before he dies, which is lovely. I do love lore, and I love McClash's character. Really does not get enough credit. Gets a lot of slander for being a bit annoying, but he is just full of lore. Now we got to my favourite part of this game, the Winter Lantern Bridge. And I really forgot how bad this area was. I forgot how bad a Winter Lanterns were just in general. But don't be wrong, you get them with your echoes, they look really cool with the glowing eyes. But my god, this area was just horrible and I was just not dealing with it today. So instead of dealing with it, I decided to sprint through to the lever and drop the giant brain because let's just deal with all the friends in this area. It is pretty much the thing you need to do when you get here. Don't get me wrong, it's difficult and a faff to get to it, but once you do it, it makes this entire area a lot easier. Before we go deal with the brain, we also do get the most pointless item, the Quiet Bell. I generally have never used this item the entire time I've played this game. I know it's a co-op item, main reason why I've probably never used it, but it's completely pointless. But we do plummet into the abyss and decide to use Make Contact on the brain. I couldn't quite remember what it gave me before I did it, but I knew I had to do it and wait for my arms to rotate. And it did drop the tier 3 Moon Rune, which was, obviously, I get the most runes possible when stuff dies, which is great for farming. Sadly, I don't really think I'm going to be farming much in this account once I'm done with it, because I do have accounts with all the weapons and all leveled up, so this account will probably die, but it was a nice thing to do. And then obviously we bashed the brain. This took about 2 minutes of just hitting it, because it has a lot of health. For me, this is the saddest part of this entire area. The shadows of the arm and the back, but there's like 8 of them, which is kind of the issue. Like there's the first 3, and then there's a bunch after with the pigs, and it really upsets me because, well, they were a huge boss. They were kind of cool, kind of unique. Never seen them, you know, they felt cool, unique, like I just said. But now they just seem like a bit of a generic mob, especially since these ones are so easy. And yes, the ones in the woods do have that snake affliction, like the entire area is afflicted with that snake, but, you know, it still does kind of ruin it. Also, this one with Nitrous absolutely batters me into the ground. I don't know how he did this, but it just kind of happens. Whilst I was here, I decided, let's just show off the most well-known Echo Farm, which is Fist a Pig. And the game decided I'm not allowed to fist a pig after my shenanigans for the rest of this game, so I'm just flat out denied. For some reason, Jeska's blood is also in a random chest here. I don't know why. I actually can't remember the reason why, but the community ever worked it out. But I hadn't used our original one, so I can't pick it up. But I make sure to come back for it later, because I would never leave my queen's blood. But out of sheer annoyance from not being able to pick it up, I decide to kill this queen who's just stood looking at her crying child. Before fighting the bosses, I realised I need to go get the blood rocks, and while attempting to do so, I was a little stupid and just plummeted to my death. Yeah, honestly, I think most of my deaths have come to me just falling, but that's not the point. We eventually do get to the blood rock, which means I can now plus 10 at least one of my weapons, which at the current of this was the Kirk Hammer. And that was a kind of big decision, because if anyone's ever played this, you can only get to 1 blood rock per normal gameplay. If you have the DLC, you can get 2 blood rocks, and through chalices you can get more, but obviously typically is 1 per playthrough, so to plus 10 a weapon, there's a big commitment to that weapon. But before I progress to doing the final boss, or at least one of them, I decided to go visit my favourite woman, who has now given birth to one of the ugly slug children, aka the god has chosen her to give birth to one of their celestial offsprings. So naturally, like any person who's been collecting umbilical cords and students' clothes, I kill them both, steal the baby's umbilical cord, and steal her shoes, for I have a raging foot fetish. With 90% of the base game completed, I decided it's time to go to Murgo's Lofts. And I won't lie, Murgo's wet nurse, just as a boss, in the appearance in the cutscene, is just so badass. Like, it's just really cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, the feathers make it look like a big fucking crow, but my god, I do actually think it's pretty goddamn cool. Looking at it, especially originally after a few years after not playing this game, but also whilst looking at it in the edit now, it just looks absolutely beautiful, and it's just really cool. The downside about this boss, he's really easy. Well, he follows the old adage, stick to that ass, rapidash, which essentially means just sit behind him and swing. And its coolest and best aura attack, the big mist attack, you just run in circles, and for 90% of it, it won't hit you. Also, she really didn't hit hard, so I could generally just trade with it, which was really upsetting. But for a final boss, don't get me wrong, it looks cool, but strength-wise, it was absolutely abysmal. I mean, to no one's surprise, I did beat this first time, because it is definitely one of the easier bosses in this game. So, again, for a final boss, it's upsetting, especially if you're just someone that's going to do this for the first time, and maybe you think, I'll trust German later on, or you don't know about the moon presence. Then, as this is a final boss, don't get me wrong, aura points 10 out of 10, but for overall boss, probably a C tier at best. Like, it does drastically fall off from gameplay. I mean, the hardest thing about this fight was, you see I've only gone through 9 blood vials, and you'll see I've gone through 19 bullets. That is because I used a cannon. That is the only reason why that took so long. I also did think this game broke, because it just was not coming up with Nightmare Slaying for the longest of times. But I get my 4th baby's umbilical cords, so I've had a 1 1/3 worth of babies, and of course, naturally, I eat it for good luck, because I eat babies. So at this point, the entire main game is done, and I've covered that in about 45 minutes of breaking down this footage. Don't get me wrong, the actual gameplay, a whole lot longer, but from what I broke down in 45 minutes, it's pretty good. But now, well, we've got a DLC, because I decided, well, I ain't going to do the DLC in New Game Plus, because I don't need to go through that type of pain, so we decided to go for it before dealing with German. Also in Cathedral Ward, I realised that my church dweller was a bit broken. Normally he cries if you don't save everyone, but every time I spoke to him, he just asked me to go save people, but there was no one for me to save, so as long as he's happy and a little confused, I'm happy, because when he cries, it's heartbreaking. He's such a nice person. But we get picked up by the giant hand, and we get Maria's lovely voice talking about the nightmare before we go into it. Just a bit like Patches, except this one's a lot more eerie. And in a nightmare, the first thing you're introduced to, obviously, is a hunter, and just completely reforms my fact that the hardest thing in this game are other hunters stroke people, opposed to bosses and just general enemies. Like, why does this guy have so much health? Even with a visceral, he's barely down to under 3/4 health. Like, you don't really need them to be that strong, but I guess if they're meant to be somewhat strong as you, it makes a bit of sense. So, yeah, I'd like it, yeah, I don't. It's kind of a weird catch-22 for me. I won't lie, the weapons, though, in this area, absolutely beautiful. Like, the Beast Cutter is a beautiful weapon, the Boom Hammer, beautiful weapon. I didn't get the Whirligig Saw, because I simply just couldn't be bothered going to get it, but again, great weapon. Just some of these weapons that old hunters have, absolutely phenomenal, and it really was a great addition. Like, if you speak of some of the best weapons in this game, DLC weapons are always mentioned, and you can see why. I also 100% use my brain here by baiting the beast and hunt to fight each other. That way I could just backstab this hunter and just kill him that way. Because my god, that made everything so much easier. See, I knew this guy exploded when I went to pick up this item, which is why I swung. And then somehow while picking up the Boom Hammer, my guy decided to take a seat, and I absolutely just ate this explosion. But we progress along and meet this lovely gentleman called Siren. He seems pretty normal compared to everyone else, so I really hope he doesn't just randomly die for no real reason. Now, looking at this intro, I absolutely love Ludwig. He is by far the best boss in Bloodborne, across everything. The fight, phenomenal. This introduction, phenomenal. Like, it's so eerie, so just terrifying. Not pure horror, but you just feel like he has an aura, he has a thing about him. And honestly, he absolutely follows through with the aura they give him, because he is actually one of the hardest bosses. I'd say definitely top 3. Whether he's 1 or 2, that's really up for your own opinion and own debate. He's probably, if you're not going to try and cheese a fight, the least cheesable boss by far. He's just big, so you can't really do much about him. But my god, I absolutely love this fight. And honestly, he killed me in about 20 seconds. Like, I realised instantly from that fight, he's definitely going to be the hardest guy I've had to fight so far. And the second attempt goes just as poor as the first. Like, they absolutely decide to just beat me into the ground. Because I realised how long this was going to take me if I decided to do it on my own, I decided to just conclude that maybe I'm a bit bad and use a summon. And we decide Hammer Bros unite, because this woman had a hammer just like me, so if it was ever written the stars for a good duo, it was going to be me and her. 2 big hammer people. And with her, we did actually get to the second phase. But he absolutely ate me once we went into the second phase. so it's been 3 attempts so far. So at this point, he's now officially the boss that's taken me the most attempts to kill. And don't get me wrong, I love watching that second cutscene. It is absolutely beautiful. And honestly, he's just pure, but based off how these fights have gone so far, I could tell right away that honestly, if nothing changed quickly, I was going to be here for at least double-digit attempts. But I thought wrong, because somehow my 4th attempt was by far the cleanest attempt. Like, I'm only showing the end of the fight here. At this point here, I've only gone through 19 blood vials. And I can see that, that's why I decided to heal unnecessarily. Like, yes, he is targeting the summon, but at the same time, like, it's just all clicked. I mean, for a man that I absolutely had no hope for earlier, it seems to just be everything clicks, and sometimes that's all it takes. It's like in football, we say momentum really is the most important thing, because once you get going, you just absolutely start flying. And the second he staggered, I knew it was over. With only 4 blood vials used, only 8 bullets used, it was an absolute complete switch from how the other 3 fights just went, and we get the guidance rune. So it was a really weird change of pace, considering how hard the original 3 fights were. But I stand by it, he is definitely one of, if not the hardest boss in this entire game. Yes, he's DLC, but obviously he's still phenomenal. Out of pure appreciation for him, I decided to cosplay as one of his knights, and give him a bit of comfort in his constant, complete pain, and decide to tell him how great the church is, even though we know how awful it is. And we are rewarded with the Holy Moonlight Sword, which is definitely the best sword in the game. Love this sword, on my account, deals the most damage. Phenomenal weapon. But obviously it's in every Souls game, I expect it to be good. Whilst fighting these 2 lovely ladies in the upper church, I realised the eyeball lady is actually weak to charged heavy attacks, only because she shoots over you if you use a charged hammer attack. So that really did just make her weak as fuck, because, well, I just bypassed her only move. And then I realised I didn't get the pendant from Lawrence, so all it said was there's a hole in the skull. So I decided I'm going to have to go all the way back to the big sleeping fire monster, which is always fun. But I grabbed my pendant and decided to run straight back, because there's no time like the present. And with the pendant in, we ascend up into the upper part of the clock tower with all the squishy head people. And we get a few more blood chunks needed for upgrading our other weapons. And I won't lie, I did completely forget how awful this area is. Like, just to get through it all, just to pull a little switch is a lot of effort. And the only reason it went so quick is because I sort of know what I'm doing. And yes, I ignored a bunch of items here and a bunch of enemies, but generally there's no purpose in most of the items or fighting them. I gain nothing, so there's no point of me just faffing around to get them. I mean, this room full of the squishy head people is just unnecessarily difficult for no reason. Like, why is there about 20 in that room? It adds absolutely nothing. Like, yes, it's meant to be difficult, but it's such a long run. Like, don't piss me off. And like every other enemy, I simply ignore the one with the big metal stick, because I just want to get through this area as quick as possible. It generally is just nothing here. I really just don't like this area. Like, don't get me wrong, it's cool to highlight how terrible the church is as a place, but honestly, I already know it's a terrible place. You don't need to have this so big. But sadly, I ignored an enemy too many, for this rat morphed me into the wall, and I had to kill myself, because somehow I got stuck in a giant switch. I don't really know how he did that, but it's not a grab attack, he simply just pushed me in. And yes, I killed him, but I had to kill myself, so I guess I'm today's biggest loser. But when respawning, I am met up with Simon, who tells us we need to kill Maria. Absolutely not subtle foreshadowing, he's literally telling us what to do. He just tells us how bad the healing church is, like I can't tell from all the people that have been experimented on and are crying out for help. But yeah, he says just go kill Lady Maria, so well, that's what we do. But my biggest enemy is myself, for I'm an idiot and just decide to sprint down some elevator shaft, which I know isn't even the correct way, and I just die and decide to just lose my 74,000 echoes because it's just not worth the hassle getting them back. I do kill this poor woman for a key, and I'm pretty sure I don't even use because I don't actually go for the door at any point. And then we find a boss based entirely on me. And you'll never guess what I do in this fight. Oh yes, it's parrying and visceral attacks. And I mean, these enemies aren't as awful as I remember. In my head, they were by far some of the worst enemies. And I don't mean that in a difficult way, I mean they were just dog shit. They actually just gave me a bit of a problem, mainly because they just wouldn't act how I thought they would. Sometimes they chased me, sometimes they used a range attack. And yes, I know that big AoE attack is trivialized by just standing behind the flower, but for some reason, every time I had that fight, they decided one of them was going to run at me, which did actually complicate things. because if I had to run up behind that flower, I was going to die. So I really had to think carefully about fighting them. I mean, they took a lot more materials than I thought it would. They cost me all my blood bullets, and they cost me 13 blood vials. And also, for some reason, this random one just didn't die with the rest of them. He just lived and kept attacking me. Which is really odd, but I decided, you know what, this guy deserves to live. So I left him alone and decided to open the door and progress. I mean, I teleported back to the research hall. He was gone, so I've only assumed he's gone to find himself on a pilgrimage. But they branded him a living failure, but I hope he finds a great success in life. But that's the lie I'll tell myself, because I actually want him to thrive. I've never seen that before, so it was quite interesting to see that some weird little glitches still exist in this game. Now, walking up to this fight, I absolutely loved the Lady Maria fight, one of my favourite fights in the game. And obviously, she has heard about the fact that I still shoot into clothing and eat babies, so she didn't take it too well and decided it was on site for me. Like most people. So, as any YouTuber, I defended myself against clear allegations that I'm guilty of, but pretended it's all okay. Now, this is where it really upset me, for I, in my first attempt, was absolutely dominating her. Like, yeah, I took a few hits to start because I was trying to get her timing down, but obviously, well, I was in no real danger, and once the ball started rolling, it really was just me dominating her. But sadly for me, my dog decided at that moment of time she really wanted some attention, so I had to give it to her. So I just get eaten here, as you can see, which was quite upsetting, but that's just how life goes. But to be fair, the fact that I died at least once, really, I mean, it made me happy, because I didn't just stomp her. Like, yeah, okay, I did stomp her second time around, which is upsetting. Like, I really did hype up this fight in my head. Like, this fight is one of my favourite in all of Bloodborne. I remember how difficult I found it originally, how people like, you've got to do this. No, just like every fight in this game, it really is just parry, visceral, repeat. Maybe on an off day, you can hit her with a backstab, not really off moments, but all fights with humanoids tend to play out the same. But my god, her cinematics, her blood weapons, her fire blood weapon, it is absolutely phenomenal. Even if I find it easy, it is cinematic mastery, and I love it. So 100% would, if you've never fought her, go fight her, because if you've never done it before, you probably will struggle. I really am suffering from knowing how most enemies play, even after all these years. But I kill her, collect the dial, and proceed to the fishing hamlets. And, well, we pass the Fish of Lore and enter the hamlet of PTSD. And I decided, right before I walked in, I was just going to sprint through all of this. And not because I don't enjoy how horrifying this area is, it just really isn't worth the effort of fighting everything. It's just really long, and it is quite difficult. And I won't lie, in this little area here, I'm stunned I survived when I was trapped in this corner. I got greedy for an item, and I really should have died because of it. I make it into the fishing hut, and I watched this monster beat Simon through a wall, but obviously he's already down, because for some reason, he was getting hunted by, well, the hunter guy. And for some reason, Simon also just happened to have the key to his room, but decided he wasn't going to deal with him, and proceeded to just get beaten to death in a lighthouse hut. Really sad end for him. I actually like Simon. But naturally, as a man who loves Simon, I decide I've got to go avenge him and kill this guy a few times. Also, I'm a whore for fashion souls and I wanted his clothes. Priority 1 was unlocking the shortcut because, well, I know exactly what boss is coming up next. While I was looking for a blood rock, I forgot there were actually 2 winter lanterns down here and I suffered accordingly. After killing one, the second one absolutely just ate me. But I did end up getting the blood rock, so I got what I needed. I mean, I accidentally fell into the lovely whale pit arena, and it was a problem because I was originally trying to scum this fight. But as you can see from the fact that I hold a Shaman Bone Blade, I still managed to scum it, even with only 2 blood vials to my name at the beginning of it. And I get another cool weapon that I can't use because I decided to go for strength weapons. I don't know why I'm like this either. And in this cutscene, I was mentally preparing for how bad I thought this boss was going to be. But before we even get on to that, look how beautiful this arena is, like the orange moon, the dark sky, and then we watch Asmongold start crawling out of his bedroom, which is mildly disgusting. But I mean, look how beautiful that moon is, look how beautiful the arena is, like, honestly, for all maybe you may not enjoy from Software games, but you can't lie, they make beautiful games, and they really need to be appreciated more, because that is an absolutely stunning arena. And this is what I was telling myself to distract myself from the absolute mental torment I was about to go through with the Orphan of Gods, because from all the Software games I've ever played, he is definitely up there for one that's caused me the most problems ever, so mentally I was really beaten. And I won't lie, muscle memory wise, he was the boss I just have no memory of beating. Like, most enemies, I can remember how I dealt with them. I think this guy must have been short luck, because absolutely nothing was clicking in my brain. And in my first few attempts, he absolutely stomped me. But luckily for me, I did actually beat him on my 4th attempt, which makes him just as high as Ludwig. So him and Ludwig actually take the top spots for the bosses that beat me the most, which I think is completely fair. I mean, Orphan of course known as one of the hardest, if not the hardest bosses in From Software games. The only weakness is that he can be parried and visceral attacked, because without that, honestly, he'd be 10 times harder if he just couldn't have that. Or he's one that can only be broken a couple of times, then it'd be a lot harder. But luckily for me, I did start remembering how to defeat him, such as doing the walk and the backstab, and occasionally getting a parry off, which was essential. But honestly, I do remember how much I loved this fight once I actually started getting into it, instead of getting stomped. That 4th and 3rd attempt, especially 2nd phase when he's quite aggressive, somehow makes it easier. Like, we talk about how great being aggressive in this game is, and being aggressive really does make this game easier. You cannot play on the defensive, it does not work. So play on the offense and you will have phenomenal fights and a phenomenal time in this game, I guarantee it. I mean, having to be that aggressive, by the way, I needed a quick attack, so the Kurt Cam was gone, the Saw Cleave was back out, the OG. You know, you gotta respect the OG weapon, it's the reason we call it the best. And I mean, look how close I also got to dying near the end of this. Like, it really was just a very close fight. I mean, I had blood vials to spare, but if he had one more swing, I was dead. But we get the cost parasite, something I can't use with a strength build, and we then decide, well, I mean, before we even decide anything, look how beautiful that arena is. It is absolutely stunning. Before we leave, we see a black shadow, and naturally, we then decide we're going to commit an act of racism and destroy it instantly. But by doing so, we then destroy the nightmare. So the nightmare is then quote-unquote over, hence it's nightmare slain, and honestly the curse is then broken. But again, like I said, that little overview of the black smoke into the moon is absolutely beautiful. And even a cinematic while we're watching it, it's absolutely gorgeous. Honestly, the way From Software can make some beautiful games is absolutely stunning to me. So before I decide to wrap up the game and fight German, I decide I've got to go back to the missed bosses. So in the DLC, we got to go back to Lawrence. And honestly, I went back to him without getting the item. Like I never went to the original elevator with his item. It really was one of those days. But luckily going back led me to the hunter again, so I could steal more of his clothes, then go into his lovely bedroom and steal his weapon after beating him with the hammer. But we collect Lawrence's skull, and then we can proceed to go back to the big monster version of Lawrence. For some reason his skull triggers his own fight. I don't really get that, but who am I to question such things? And we sprint into a room, and I won't lie, Lawrence has a pretty normal reaction to us. I mean, we disturbed what looks like an absolutely phenomenal sleep, and I would scream just as goddamn loudly if you'd ruined a great slumber. Especially on Christmas, which is where we're at, so honestly, this is the first time I think we're in the wrong. Fuck us. All hell Lawrence. All jokes aside, now that the cutscene's over, I'm just going to show you my entire first attempt fighting Lawrence, because when the Democracy said Lawrence is the hardest boss in Bloodborne, I thought he was lost his mind. I thought the king had fallen. But honestly, after fighting him, I can kind of see why he says it. He's somehow a cleric beast with no weakness. Like, I think the fight went on for me, 25 seconds, and I'm dead. Like, he has no weakness. You can break his skull a few times, yes, but apart from that, a lot of HP, a lot of damage, a lot of AoE. Honestly, for me, it's between him and Ludwig, who are the hardest two in the game. Maybe Orphan of Cos, because pure sheer aggression. But the one thing you have against Lawrence and Ludwig that you don't have against Cos is you can summon people for their fights, which makes their fights a little easier. So, I mean, overall, if I didn't have the summons, Ludwig and Lawrence would be the harder fights compared to Cos, so that's why I think Lawrence and Ludwig are top two, and Cos is a respectable third place for the hardest boss in the game. Now for the fifth fight, I did choose to use the summon, which, my god, made it easier, and I'm saying fifth fight, so you can tell, naturally he's already taken me the most attempts now at this point, because most bosses only took me 4 attempts. So, this guy being the hardest, or the one that killed me the most, is a theory I can get behind, because he has so much health, and he does so much damage. So if you don't have fire resistance and physical resistance, he will eat you. And I came very close to dying in this overall. So honestly, if you missed him, like I did the first time I did this DLC, I didn't know he was a thing. It's really upsetting because he is actually a really hard and challenging fight, but he's also cinematically and cosmetically just absolutely gorgeous. What a roller coaster of adjectives there, and adjective stacking to absolutely glaze Lawrence there. But honestly, if you've never done this fight, I'd 100% recommend it. It's honestly really challenging. I used a summon because, well, I've done this fight on my own before, and yes, there are ways to cheese it, unlike with Ludwig, where Ludwig you'd have to fight. Lawrence you can cheese with Simon's Bowblade. So there are ways around it, which maybe trivializes it, which is why you could put Ludwig at 1, Lawrence at 2. But if you're just going to fight them normally, Lawrence for me just feels that little bit harder, especially with like giant AoE lava attacks like that. But the fact that he only drops half the runes of Orphan of Cause and drops the Beast Embrace is really upsetting for a drop for such a great boss. Like if he had like some sort of weapon or something fire related, that'd be cool. But I guess since he is a beast, having a Beast Embrace can be somewhat relatable. You might be thinking, what's left for me to do? I actually forgot to fight the Dark Beast Pearl. Or is it a Dark Pearl Beast? I can never quite remember. It is the Dark Beast Pearl. And honestly, that one attack there is the one Violet use. Because this boss really was a lot weaker than I remember. Like, I knew he was weak. I knew he was brittle. But honestly, it takes, what, 2 attacks and he's down? He has maybe like 5,000 health. You hit him with Big Hammer, he goes down. And the fact that I've shown this entire fight while speaking, and he's almost at half health, well, flat almost dead, really does show how upsetting it was that I probably missed this. So I thought this earlier on. I was going to say maybe it might have been a bit harder, but probably not. Maybe if I didn't have the summon, he'd get staggered a little less. But even if he was getting staggered less, I'd just shoot him with the cannon, or I'd find another way to cripple him. This fight is honestly, in the nicest way, diabolically bad. For out of like the 20 bosses in this game, I'd have to say he's got to be near the bottom, near 20th. And you get the Spark Hunter badge. I can't remember what that drops. So he really isn't worth going after, unless you want to go speak to Jorah without having to fight him, like he was doing to me earlier. Speaking of Jorah, I decided I wanted to get revenge for all the shit he caused me earlier in this game. And to my lovely surprise, he decided to talk to me. So I don't know if the door trigger going in the back way untriggers his violent conduct, but he gives you the decision: do you want to spare the beasts or do you want to attack them? I'm at the end of the game, and there's no benefit of actually attacking them. From what I know, they don't drop anything worthwhile. Maybe an antidote, but I've already killed the Bloodstarved beast, so I actually don't need antidotes or anything. So for sparing the beast, he gives me his badge, and I let him live, unlike his Michael Jackson counterpart from earlier. But with everything else done, all that's left for me is to do is to fight Gerben and fight the Moon Presence. Now, I could have refused to fight, but there was no way I was doing that, because I've seen the animation. You just wake up from the dream, Gerben remains, and the cycle continues. That's that ending pretty much summarized. It is, quote-unquote, the bad ending. Not the worst ending, it's a bad ending. Or the neutral ending, maybe. But pretty much, we'll go up to Gerben, and we will refuse, which he then decides to go absolutely maniacal and decides he has to kill us, which means we trigger the Gerben fight, which is the best final boss, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Murgo's got absolutely great aura, but Gerben has aura, he's challenging, he's absolutely gorgeous arena. Absolutely love the Gerben fight. I mean, look at this. Absolutely stunning, with the flaming building, the moon in the background, the flowers, which I'm pretty sure they said is based off Solid Snake, which is a pretty cool little reference. But yeah, unfortunately for Gerben, his fight plays out like every humanoid fight. It is parry and visceral. Now for me, the hardest part of this fight here was just adjusting to his attack patterns, because obviously you have to play the whole game till you can fight him again. So obviously my timing for his parries are a little off, even though I've done it quite a few times. But honestly, his parry and visceral windows are quite generous. When you parry him, he stays in his visceral state for quite a while. And his health, compared to someone like Lawrence or Cos, is quite a chunk lower, which makes him quite a bit easier compared to those. But from the base game, he is definitely one of, if not the hardest boss from the base game. But especially when he's in short form mode with his sword there, he is absolutely so vulnerable to being parried, because he does about 10 attacks in a row really, really quickly, opposed to that big swing or the dash, where maybe it's just a bit too quick for me to get the shot off to hit. The short version is actually quite a bit more vulnerable. So I really do wish he stayed in his violent screech mode, in burial blade mode a bit more. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers. That's just how my fight went. If you fight him, he might go in that mode a bit more, and it'll be a bit harder to parry. I mean, even when he went in big burial blade mode, he did end up forcing me down into my last few bullets and blood vials, which was then going to make the upcoming fight a whole lot harder. But he has a really sad speech saying the dream was long, because obviously he's wanted to die for ages, because he's been stuck in this dream under the moon presence. And then, of course, the moon presence appears because we killed him. And I mean, look at that cutscene. That is absolutely gorgeous. Like, when people say, think of like beautiful cinematics you've seen in games, that is one of the best by far. And the following one straight after is absolutely phenomenal. Like the moon presence as an aura thing, gorgeous, stunning. The downside is his fight is absolutely awful, which is really upsetting. He also gets rejected by us because we ate babies, so there's your life lesson: eat children. Now, I can't lie, I did actually sort of struggle at the beginning of this fight, and you might be thinking, yeah, but the moon presence is known for being so easy. The thing is, with the moon presence, I don't do his fight anywhere near enough to actually know his attacks, so it is I'm learning his fight when I fight him every time. But the downside is I beat him first time, so obviously he can't be that difficult. And he is a bit goofy. Like that cinematic earlier where he's floating down and he's so silky and smooth. Like his powers are so like prominent and affect the entire world. Like he is like the strongest being, basically. But in this fight, he's just like a big goofy, like bloodstaff beast all flailing around. Like the Dark Pearl beast all skinny. And yes, he has the 1 HP attack, but he then just stays still and you can just rally most of your health back like I do in this clip. Yes, he almost kills me. I have 1 blood vial, then I have none. And you can see he's got maybe 45% health left. Well, by the end of this, I end up winning the fight because he did the 1 HP attack again. And, well, when he does that, he's vulnerable and very easy to kill. So, as a final boss, all the cinematics before are gorgeous and absolutely perfect. But the final boss fight itself is just an absolute waste. Now look at this ending. I've managed to rally most of it, and I've done a shit ton of damage. He does another roar, which leaves him vulnerable, and yes, he does the occasional blood splatter attack. But I beat him first time with 3 vials and 3 bullets. I didn't use any of the bullets, I used the vials because, well, I hadn't fought him in about 3 years, so I'd expect to not get it that well. But like I said, 1 HP attack leaves him super vulnerable, and that's what kills him. And then we get Nightmare Slain. And then once a Nightmare Slain, we are then made into a slug. So basically we're the next god, and we're meant to be the next being, the next thing to come. Which is pretty cool, I guess. And it is what's deemed a good ending, being turned into a slug. And then for context of what German's ending is, if you don't eat the umbilical cords, you then take German's place, you're locked in a wheelchair, and you're the one that keeps the dream going. So you take German's place, which is the quote-unquote bad ending. But overall, what did I think of Bloodborne? Is it still as amazing as it was 10 years ago? Sadly for me, not really. Like, don't be wrong, it's still a phenomenal game, and if you've never played it before, 100% play it. Like, cinematics are 10 out of 10, they're beautiful. The way the game works, beautifully designed, it's beautifully crafted, the way it all flows together. Yes, there are some additional bits that maybe don't flow as well, such as Canehurst, but that is an optional area, of course, so maybe it shouldn't flow as well. And some of the bosses really are a letdown, such as the Witches of Hemwick or the Dark Pearl Beast, or Dark Beast Pearl. I can never quite remember its name, even though I've literally just seen it about 10 minutes ago while I was talking and editing. It's just some bosses are a bit lacking. Now, not every boss can be a 10 out of 10. But do I stand on my hill of I think Bloodborne's better than Elden Ring? Probably not. Now, I mean, they're both 2 of my favourite games of all time. I'll play them both countless more times. But from what Bloodborne felt like 10 years ago, it feels a lot slower now. And yes, this is nothing to do with it being 30 FPS. It's still a quick game and you've got to be quite aggressive, but it's obviously not how I remember it being. It's a lot easier, a lot less challenging. And this might be an issue when spoiler alert for my future videos, I do plan on playing all the Souls games, Sekiro, so how the speed on those feel compared to Elden Ring, which people always said that is a quick game, so when you transition down, all those slower games are going to feel quite a bit easier, but that's obviously something I'm going to have to deal with. But overall, I mean, Bloodborne cinematics are still 10 out of 10, bosses are still probably a 10 out of 10. Yeah, some bosses are bad, but some of the phenomenal ones like Ludwig, Moonpresent Cinematic, German, Maria, absolutely phenomenal bosses and something the world design. You can see why I won Game of the Year. And the big downside, it is nowhere near as big as I remember because, well, it took me 15 hours to complete this. And yes, I know what I'm doing, so obviously it's a lot more streamlined. It might take you 30 hours. But obviously compared to Elden Ring, lots smaller, which is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes less is more. But there are some negative facts in Bloodborne, which maybe does nullify that opinion. But anyway, guys, what do you think? Leave it in the comments below. I still think it's one of the best games ever made, but obviously that's just my opinion. So do let me know, and I'll see you next time. Take care.